And yeah, I started baking. I was so happy I started baking for myself, for the family, for friends that we had made, neighbors, my kids' schools, their teachers, like everybody gets a piece of bread. Like, I'm so excited.
I'm Dalia Colon, and this is The Zest. Citrus, seafood, Spanish flavor, and Southern charm. The Zest celebrates cuisine and community in the Sunshine State. Today, the life-changing magic of bread. The New Testament book of Matthew says, "Man does not live by bread alone." But ask Nana Bonsu-Hammond, and she'll tell you that without bread, she wouldn't be the independent businesswoman she is today. Nana is the owner and executive chef of Jack's Bread Co. It's a bakery and cafe on Jacksonville's South Side. She recently chatted with me about why bread overseas is usually better than bread in the U.S. Sorry, America. A popular menu item that pays homage to her West African roots, and why she says bread saved her life.
I moved to the US from London, the UK. I moved here in 2007. And most of the things I make, the products I produce, it basically reminds me of home. I've brought some of what I've enjoyed growing up in London. And also I have my African heritage. So I've incorporated some of that in there as well. So yeah, from London, moved here 2007 due to my ex-husband's work. And I became a stay-at-home mum for maybe like 4 or 5 years. And during that time was when I picked up my passion for baking, just to while away the time. And I followed it through, went to culinary school. Yes, I did.
My mouth is dropping. This is like, we need to be making a movie of your life. This is so cool because I thought you were going to say, oh, I grew up baking with my grandma and I've always loved it.
Absolutely not.
I love this because there are stay-at-home parents listening or just people who are in one season of life. And to hear you say that you reinvented yourself during that time is so inspiring. So tell me what a day looked like for you typically and what sorts of things you were baking.
Back then or now?
Both. Let's start with back then.
Back then, it was just basically looking for clean baked goods. And I think it's. Let me just backtrack a little bit more because I didn't really set out to just start baking. It was me looking for bread because I'm a huge bread eater. I love sandwiches. I love toast, bread and butter, bread pudding, just name it. That's me. So I remember buying my first loaf of bread from a supermarket, and it actually sat on my shelf for, if I'm not exaggerating, 2-3 weeks. And the bread was still fresh. It never staled. It didn't get dry. There was nothing. It was still good to eat. And that basically intrigued me. I was wondering, what do they put in here? Like, how come? Because I was used to bread having a lifespan of like 2 to 3 days. And it would usually say it on the packet. So if you bought it on Monday, you know, either you're finishing it by Thursday, the latest, or freezing it. And so, yeah, I then actually paid attention to the ingredients. And strange enough, there was like 80% of the ingredients in the product that I could not recognize. And so I started doing more. Of course, I'm a housewife. When my kids are in school, I have time to do more research, like whiling away the time. I'm in a foreign country where I don't really have that many friends. So, yeah, I researched a bit more and I came to that realization that here in America, there really isn't strict rules in terms of what goes in. I'm not talking about other products, but bread in particular. And in the Western world, some of the flours, as in bread flours, that have been banned in the likes of the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Europe are just left to the discretion of the baker here in the US. So flour conditioners and potassium bromate, all these are like cancer-causing products. And if it's not being regulated strictly but left to the baker, of course, for any business, they're all about making the money. And these products also help to yield much bigger volume from the flour bags that you're using. So it got me thinking more about what we were eating. And I remember saying to my ex-husband at the time, I am going to make our own breads because I don't trust this product. And I thought that it would just be like baking a cake, you know. I went online, picked up some recipes, and was ready to just bake our fresh loaves. And my first few attempts were complete failures. I baked bricks. And then it got slightly better as I was talking to my mum, my mother-in-law at the time, kind of talking to other people who have tried bread baking in the past, getting some tips. And then I was able to make products where I'm saying products now because I'm in business, but making bread that we could only eat like in the first 30 minutes when it came out of the oven because it's still warm and soft. And then after an hour, it goes back to being brick-like.
Wow. But isn't it funny how when you become a parent, you have a new awareness for all the things that might be harmful, whether it's food additives or cleaning products. And here in the US, you're right, anything goes. We've got dyes in our candy that are not even allowed overseas. If you go overseas and buy a pack of Skittles, it doesn't even look the same because they don't allow all that stuff. It's just incredible. And honestly, a good loaf of bread should not last a week anyway, because it should be so good that people just eat it right up. Yeah. So what did you do from there?
So, I just kept trying and reading on how to basically make the bread happen for me. And I found a recipe online, which was the Jamaican hard dough bread. And I just went just as the recipe called for, word for word, and it came out good. So then I was able to get one recipe right. And I started baking. I was so happy I started baking for myself, for the family, for friends that we had made, neighbors, my kids' schools, their teachers, like everybody gets a piece of bread. Like, I'm so excited. Everyone gets bread.
You're like Oprah, you get bread, you get bread.
Exactly. So I'll take some to church. And then I was like, okay, now maybe I could try different things. So I started just basically baking different things like cookies and muffins. We had gotten together with friends one day, and as I was showing off some of my, nicely curated products, they're like, Nana, have you ever thought about going to culinary school? And I was like, no, because back home, I actually worked in corporate. I worked in operations. And I was like, no, but we got talking. They're like, yeah, because you can really, make something out of this. You have the passion for it. Try it. So that got my antennas up. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, why not? I enrolled with the French Culinary Institute. I think presently they've changed their name to the International Culinary Center. I was able to move from there to do an internship at Dean and DeLuca, which was a high-end food store in Soho, New York City. And I was able to rise through the ranks and become the supervisor working under Chef Louis Vol. Then again, my ex-husband's job was moving him to Jacksonville from up north. And so I resigned and the family moved down here. And hence I started baking from my house, doing cottage food.
Unbelievable. When you're telling the story, you seem like you can't even believe this trajectory. I love that you took that leap of faith and went to culinary school, because a lot of people would stop there. They'd say, oh, that's a nice dream, but I'm too old, or I've got to be responsible and think of the family. So what advice do you have for somebody who's where you were at that time? Somebody who's where you were at that time?
It's never too late. It's never too late. Follow your passion. And even especially for stay-at-home moms, if you can find your passion and follow it. Those who are planning on going back to work eventually, if, going back to their corporate jobs, great, or whatever it is that they're doing. But if you don't and you need to find something to do, find it. Because where I'm at now in 2024, I call it bread saved my life. Because yes, I divorced last year. And that's why I call it bread saved my life, because I left work in London, moved to the US, and then divorced years later. And I'm able to move on with a business that I wasn't even planning for it to be what it is today, but it saved my life. Yes.
Wow, bread saved my life because
Yeah,
it gave you the independence.
exactly.
Wow. Oh,
Exactly.
I didn't think this conversation was going here,
We'll
but
be
this is
going with the
amazing.
direction it's going. I know.
What are the challenges and opportunities of having a bakery in Jacksonville? That's not, a place that normally gets a ton of attention.
Yeah, I mean, from the get go, Jacksonville has been great for the bakery, mainly due to the fact that there aren't that many made from scratch bakeries here in the city, or even mainly bread. I can only name maybe three, including us. There are lots of people that have moved into the city from up north, from Europe, and from other parts of the world that are looking for what we make. And so it's been a blessing to be able to produce and provide for that part of our clientele. And even our Jacksonville natives who have traveled out and have had different things in Paris or London and are able to come to Jack's Bread Co. and to be able to get what it is that they enjoyed outside of the US. And also, we have our clients that want to eat something that is clean without the preservatives and the additives, because a loaf of bread that you get from Jack's Bread Co. won't have more than 6 ingredients in it.
Wow.
And you can identify everything that's in there. We don't add any flour conditioners. We don't add any additives. My advice to my customers is your preservative is your freezer. If you don't plan on eating your bread for the next couple of days or so, we slice it for you, you take it home and you freeze it. Then you just take out the slices as and when you go. But then you know that, of course, you're enjoying some gluten, but it's clean, you know? So Jacksonville it's been awesome for us. In terms of challenges, I think for any small business like mine, I would say it doesn't even matter where you're located, I think it's finding the right staff. We make everything from scratch. So it is very skill intensive and there's a lot of training that goes into it. And so I've had potential staff members walk into my kitchen, see a stack of flour bags and wonder, like, what are we supposed to do with this?
Oh, no.
And so I think over the years, hiring has been the challenge.
I need you to tell me about some of the most popular products. I was on your website earlier. My mouth was watering. I know you said you grew up in London and you also have an African heritage in your family. So tell me about how both of those influences show up in the bakery.
One of our best sellers, which is the African sweet bread. And I actually enjoyed the African sweet bread in London and also in Ghana, which is where myself and my family are from originally. And I decided to make it just the way I remembered it from there. So I put together the recipe and, of course, with input from family members here and abroad. And I was able to create the product to mimic exactly what I used to enjoy when I was young. Because I remember we would drive to Tooting Broadway, which is London, and then just buy that bread from there. And this is a bakery that early in the morning, there are lines around the block. Like if you don't get there on time, you won't get a loaf. So yeah, I made that product to mimic exactly that and what I've had in Ghana as well. And okay, I don't want to be big-headed here, but if I'm not exaggerating, I think our product is really spot on. It's it's even better than some other loaves of African sweetbreads that I've tried elsewhere. So yeah, I was able to use my skills and my experience to actually make an already good product much better. So yeah, it's buttery, it's milky, it's medium sweet, and You can have it with anything, like a bit of butter, have it toasted, make a grilled cheese. And we offer sandwiches in the bakery as well. So we use that. It's very versatile. It's just awesome. Yeah.
Oh, I wish Jacksonville wasn't 4 hours away from Tampa because you're making me hungry. And I mean, I don't think it's being big-headed because who better than you would know how to make a proper African sweetbread? I love that. And then what are some of the other popular products?
Oh, our sourdough. Hands down, we make the best sourdough in the city. And that's not from Ghana, that's not from London, that is purely from culinary school, because we were taught how to make breads from around the world and basically tweaking some products to make something that is very unique for yourself. So, the ordinary baker just goes online or buys a cookbook or bake book or whatever, and then just make things according to what the recipe says. Whereas an expert of bread like myself actually uses percentages. So when I have a client describe something to me, I remember the Marriott at Sawgrass, and the chef there described a product that I'd never had. And that is the bolillo. And that I think is South American. And I'd never had it. So he described it and sent me photos of it. And I was able to, from what he said, build a recipe from that.
Wow.
Exactly. And so, yeah, we make all sorts. The sourdough, hands down, is the best in the city, like I said earlier, because we use long fermentation process overnight in our fridge. And that is used with my starter that I actually built for my first day in culinary school as well. And I call that starter Ashanti. And that is named after the Ashanti tribe in Ghana. So, yeah, and I've had that since 2011. I've kept it going and we're in 2024. So that's what, like 13 years old?
That's pretty impressive.
Right? Yeah.
And all the people who tried to make starter during the pandemic are bowing down to you right now. I did want to ask you, because you mentioned it's a slow process, and your bakery received a snail of approval certificate from Slow Food First Coast. So what does this mean, and why is slow food important to you?
Yeah, because we live in a time where food is just fast. It's fast food everywhere. And I can see why, though, because we're currently, the world is like on a go, fast paced basis. So people just want to grab and go, which is great. But it doesn't also mean we should let the integrity of the product drop. So the snail of approval was given to us because we still make things the old fashioned way, especially our breads. That means that we are using our long fermentation processes to let the dough itself ferment and proof and get to the point where we know it's ripened enough to get baked, compared to adding all these additives just to whip up bread in like 45 minutes, or put ingredients at one end of a plant and then there's a baked product coming through at the other end. We're very much hands-on. Most of our products are all handmade. Actually, not even most. Every product is handmade, from our bagels to our African sweetbread to the sourdough. It's carefully handmade. And then so there is a science that goes with being able to produce these things in the timely manner that we do, because we use like 24 hours to produce for the next day. So hence we were given the seal of approval. So no preservatives, no additives, still using the old-fashioned way of baking.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when people come in, you said earlier, they're looking for the bread they had in Paris or on some vacation, and then they find it at your bakery. Are people ever surprised that you're the one behind these products?
I'm not sure if people are really surprised about me, but I think they're surprised to find it here in the city. Because we have people that would come in like, oh, I've been in Jacksonville for 5 years and I didn't know you guys existed. We read this article, or a friend of theirs mentioned it to them or whatever. So I think sometimes that's the surprise. And then to find that they're actually getting a proper French croissant on Bay Meadows Road. And you can, because we also have an open plan kitchen. So when you're at the front, you can see through the action in the back. And we also post short videos on what we're doing back there. So I think that usually is the surprise. Because compared to maybe walking into your local grocery store and picking up a box of croissant, you're actually seeing it being made and it looks just like what you would get in Paris. Yeah.
That's awesome. So do you think our relationship with bread is changing? Because there was a time when people said, oh, I'm going low carb. And a lot of people still are. Actually, my neighbor just dropped off some baked goods this morning to me that were left over from an event she had over the weekend. And she said, I got to get these out of the house. I'm not doing bread. I very much am still doing bread. And it sounds like you are too.
You and me both.
So how do you think about that as someone who's selling, bread and bagels and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think now it's changing. A few years back, it was the strict no gluten, bread is bad, bread is not good for you, it gives you joint pain, it does this, it does that. But I think what people were failing to realize was that bread has been around for centuries. What we're complaining about today is not bread itself. It's what goes into the bread, because water is not bad. Water is good for everyone. We all need to hydrate. But what kind of water are you drinking? It can also make you sick if you don't get the right source. So for us at Jack's Bread Co., we're constantly educating our clients, as in, this is what we do. We have no preservatives. We have no additives, because the preservatives is really what is bad for you. And when you pick up a loaf of bread from your local grocery store and you see all those 30 ingredients and all the chemicals that are mentioned on there, is that supposed to be in bread? No. Bread is just supposed to be your flour, water, salt, sugar, if you want something sweet, and then yeast. And then what kind of yeast are you using? I mean, sourdough bread, for example, is one of the best breads for everyone because it has that natural starter in there. But even that, you would find the big brands wanting to yield something very fast and don't have the time for all those long fermentation processes, just adding in things just to whip up a quick loaf of sourdough bread. We will have people that have never had a real one actually look at our products and go, how is it so dark? I'm like, that's how sourdough is supposed to come out. That long fermentation produces you a dark crust. And that is the real deal. When you find like a pale looking one, trust me, it's just white bread. it's white bread with a taste of sour added to it. So yeah, I think now people are coming back to bread. Of course, there are still the people that feel like, I don't want to touch it, it's bad for you. But I think we can never do without bread. I mean, take bread, take potatoes, take rice. Those are staples globally. Every country, every region has its own style of bread. And this is something that our ancestors have been eating up to date. So it's not going anywhere. What we really need to look at is how we're processing it and how we're manufacturing it. And then people making sure that wherever they're getting it from, they're getting the right type of bread. And then talk to your baker, and find out what they're putting in there and be educated about the products that you're consuming. And I think that's my advice to people that don't want to touch bread at the moment. Of course, there are the celiacs or people who have some serious digestive issues that they can't digest certain types of food, and bread may be a part of it. But I think if it's a lifestyle change, like I said, everything in moderation. And then just make sure that you're buying the right type of bread.
Well, it sounds like you're selling the right type of bread, and you've ruined store-bought bread for all of your customers. They'll never taste the same.
Not just store-bought, it's even restaurant bread. I'll talk to some of my customers who have followed me from my cottage food days doing farmers markets. And they're like, oh my gosh, like these days I'll sit in a restaurant and they bring me a bread basket and I'm just going through and being like, that is not sourdough. That's not ciabatta. This is not what that's supposed to be like. So yeah, I'm turning them into bread snobs.
Yes,
hey.
Do it.
I try.
And now I'm one. You've converted me and everyone listening. Nana, this has been fantastic. Your story and educating us about bread. Wow, so much information in such a short amount of time. So I'm sure you've got something in the oven or somewhere to get back to. But we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Nana Hammond is the owner and executive chef of Jack's Bread Co. in Jacksonville. If you'd like to learn more about starting a cottage food business, then check out our previous episode on that topic from May 4th, 2023. You'll find a link in the show notes or on our website, thezestpodcast.com. I'm Dalia Colon. I produce The Zest with Andrew Lucas and Alexandria Ebron. The Zest is a production of WUSF. Copyright 2024, part of the NPR network.